My wife told me flatly, I don't cook for you anymore. I cook for my children. You're an adult, deal with it yourself. I stayed silent. 3 weeks later, when she received the divorce filing, her screaming about how I was throwing everything away over one meal echoed through the entire house. It happened on a Wednesday evening. I'd worked late again, one of those exhausting shifts where you're running on caffeine and willpower. When I finally got home around 8, all I wanted was to sit down, eat something decent, and maybe zone out in front of the television for an hour before bed. The house belonged to me. I'd purchased it 3 years before meeting Michelle. After our wedding 6 years ago, she moved in with her 2 kids from her first marriage. Tyler was 17 now, Madison 15. I thought we were building something real together, an actual blended family where everyone had a place. Walking through the front door, I smelled pot roast. My stomach growled immediately. It had been one of those days where I'd skipped lunch entirely, too many meetings back to back. I headed toward the kitchen, expecting to find everyone finishing up dinner. Michelle sat at the counter checking her email. Tyler and Madison were at the table with full plates in front of them, pot roast and vegetables and fresh rolls. They were laughing about something on Madison's phone. It looked warm and normal, like any regular family evening. Hey everyone, I said, dropping my briefcase by the door. That smells incredible. Michelle glanced up briefly. Hey, the kids mumbled something without looking away from the phone. I went to grab a plate from the cabinet, my mouth already watering. As I reached toward the pot on the stove, Michelle's voice stopped me cold. There wasn't any anger in it, which somehow made it worse, just this flat, matter-of-fact tone. There isn't any left for you. I paused, confused. I looked at the pot. There was easily a third of the roast remaining, plus plenty of vegetables. I laughed a little, thinking she must be joking. What do you mean there's plenty here? She set her phone down and looked directly at me with zero warmth in her expression. I didn't make enough for you, Daniel. This is dinner for me and my kids. My brain struggled to process what she was saying. The words didn't make sense. Okay, well, I can just take a smaller portion. I'm not picky, really. Then she said it. The sentence that ended everything, though I didn't realize it yet. I don't cook for you, Daniel. I cook for my children. You're an adult. Deal with it yourself. Then she picked her phone back up like the conversation was over. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Tyler and Madison suddenly became very focused on their plates, clearly uncomfortable but saying nothing. The warm kitchen atmosphere turned glacial in an instant. Deal with it yourself. I stood there holding an empty plate, trying to understand what had just happened. There was no rage, no dramatic emotional reaction. Instead, something just clicked into place in my mind. Like a puzzle piece I'd been ignoring suddenly fitting perfectly into the picture. I looked at the scene, my wife scrolling on her phone, her kids eating food I'd paid for at a table I owned in a house where I covered every single bill. And me, the adult, being told to fend for myself. The provider who made the entire scene possible, now officially just the guy funding everything from the outside. Without a word, I put the plate back. I grabbed some leftover Chinese food from the fridge, microwaved it, and ate standing up while reading something on my phone. Nobody spoke. When I finished, I rinsed my container and went to my office, closing the door behind me. That was when the marriage ended. She just had no idea yet. Over the next month, I dealt with it. I didn't create drama or demand apologies or try to have some big emotional discussion. There was no point. She'd shown me exactly where I stood in her world, crystal clear. I started buying my own groceries on my way home, small shopping trips, just what I needed for a few days. I bought a grill and started cooking my own meals outside on the deck. Burgers, steaks, grilled chicken. I'd eat out there with a book, actually relaxing for the first time in months. I also stopped the automatic monthly transfers into her personal spending account. The house bills still got paid, of course. Electricity, water, mortgage, all handled. But that steady stream of cash she used for shopping and restaurants and whatever else she wanted, that just stopped. I canceled the transfer without mentioning it. She noticed within a week. She came to me annoyed one evening. The grocery card got declined today and there's no money in my account. I looked up from my laptop. I'm dealing with it like you told me to. I handle my own food now, so I adjusted our financial arrangement. Daniel, this isn't funny. My kids need groceries. They're welcome to anything I buy, I said calmly. And you can use our joint checking account for groceries. That account had maybe $200 in it. Barely anything compared to the thousands I'd been depositing monthly into her personal account. She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. She thought I was being petty, punishing her. She couldn't grasp that I was simply accepting the new reality she'd created. While she fumed about money, I was taking bigger steps, quietly. I met with a divorce attorney, one of the most respected in town. I explained everything. The prenuptial agreement we'd signed that clearly protected my premarital assets. The 6 years of financial records showing I'd supported the entire household alone. The dinner incident and her exact words. He nodded thoughtfully, then said it was one of the clearest cases of marital abandonment he'd seen. One partner completely checking out while still enjoying the financial benefits. He prepared the paperwork. Everything was in order. What I didn't realize then, what I'd only discover later, was that the dinner comment wasn't random cruelty. It was part of something much more calculated. She'd been planning her exit for months. She was just trying to set up the most profitable departure possible. Update 1: It's been 10 days since I filed for divorce. Thank you for all the supportive comments on my original post. Some of you warned me that things would get worse before they got better. You were absolutely right. After the initial shock of receiving the papers, Michelle's panic transformed into righteous fury. She spent that entire weekend either locked in her bedroom making angry phone calls or stomping through the house, alternating between tears and death glares. Tyler and Madison have made themselves scarce, mostly staying in their rooms. I don't blame them one bit. Her first move was calling her mother Patricia, who then immediately called me ready for battle. Daniel, what on earth is wrong with you? Michelle says you're divorcing her because she didn't serve you dinner one night. Have you completely lost your mind? I kept my tone even. Patricia, this has nothing to do with one dinner. It's about being explicitly told I'm not part of the family I'm financially supporting. That comment was just the final symptom of a much deeper problem. She's exhausted raising those children, Patricia snapped. Sometimes men need to grow up and make their own sandwich instead of acting like babies. I completely agree, I said, which is why I'm handling all my own affairs from now on. Her attorney can contact my attorney with any concerns. I gave her my lawyer's information and ended the call politely. Next came the predictable attempt to weaponize the kids. Michelle approached me a few days later with a new strategy, eyes red and voice trembling. Daniel, please think about Tyler and Madison. This is going to devastate them. They'll lose their home, their school, their stability. Is your pride really worth destroying their lives? I've thought extensively about them, I replied. I'll ensure they're taken care of during the transition. But this house is my sole property according to our prenuptial agreement. It was never going to be their inheritance. Where you and they live afterward is your responsibility. Mentioning the prenup made her face tight. I suspect she never thought it would actually matter or that I'd enforce it. She hired her own lawyer within 48 hours, an aggressive one from what my attorney tells me. The first formal demand letter arrived yesterday. My lawyer called to discuss it. The demands were honestly laughable. She wants exclusive possession of my house. She wants permanent spousal support at nearly 3 times what we'd offered. And most absurdly, she's demanding I pay child support for Tyler and Madison, claiming I assumed a parental role and created expectations of ongoing support. My attorney actually chuckled reading that section. He said it's standard intimidation tactics, throwing everything at the wall hoping something sticks. We responded immediately with a firm letter. It reiterated every clause of the prenuptial agreement. It offered reasonable temporary alimony to help her transition back to employment. And it completely rejected any financial obligation toward children who aren't legally mine and whose biological father is still alive. But here's where things get interesting. While organizing our financial documents for the divorce, I discovered something. An email Michelle had sent that accidentally went to our shared email address instead of her personal one. It was dated about 5 months ago, well before the dinner incident. She'd written to a real estate agent asking about 2-bedroom apartments across town. She wanted to know about rental requirements, whether they'd accept someone without recent employment, whether a large security deposit could compensate for no job history. I stared at that email for 20 minutes trying to process it. She hadn't just been thinking vaguely about leaving, she'd been actively researching how to do it. When I showed my attorney, he went very quiet. Then he asked me to forward it immediately. He said it demonstrated premeditation, that she'd been planning to leave but was positioning herself for maximum financial advantage first. Suddenly, everything made sense. The dinner incident wasn't spontaneous cruelty. It was a test. She was seeing how far she could push, how much she could degrade our relationship while maintaining access to my income. She was building her justification for why she deserved everything in the divorce. She hadn't been checking out, she'd already checked out months earlier. She was just staging it to look like I was the problem. I reached out to Tyler yesterday. Asked if we could meet for coffee, just the two of us. He's 17, nearly an adult, and I've always tried to maintain a decent relationship with him. We met near his school. He looked uncomfortable, caught between his mother and me. I'm not putting you in the middle, I told him. I just want you to know this isn't about you or Madison. You didn't cause this, he nodded, staring into his coffee. Then quietly that night at dinner, Madison and I heard what she said to you. We both thought it was really messed up. I appreciate you telling me that, I said. She talks about you sometimes when you're not around, he continued. Says you're boring, that you work too much, that she settled for less than she deserved. He looked guilty sharing this, but I was grateful. It confirmed everything. This wasn't one bad moment. This was her actual perspective. You're not crazy, he added. She's become mean lately. Now I'm sitting with all the pieces visible, the divorce filed, the prenup solid, the evidence she was planning to leave anyway, and the knowledge she'd been systematically dismantling our marriage while I was too busy working to notice. The preliminary hearing is next week. My attorney says it's mostly procedural. But Michelle's lawyer has filed concerning motions claiming I've been financially controlling and isolating her from resources. My lawyer isn't worried. We have bank statements, the prenup, and now that apartment hunting email. The evidence supports my position completely, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous. You never know what someone will do when cornered. Update 2, it's been 6 weeks since filing. The house has become completely surreal. We're essentially strangers sharing space, communicating only through attorneys or brief practical text messages. Michelle's legal strategy of demanding everything has collided with the reality of an airtight prenuptial agreement. Her lawyer is competent, but no lawyer can rewrite a contract both parties signed voluntarily with full representation. The preliminary hearing happened last week. I need to tell you about it because that's when everything truly shifted. Michelle arrived dressed in black like she was attending a funeral. Minimal makeup, this wounded expression that her lawyer clearly coached. She looked like a victim. Her attorney gave an impassioned speech about how I'd financially controlled her throughout the marriage, made her dependent, then pulled support without warning. He discussed Tyler and Madison as if they were my children, implying I had moral obligations to continue supporting them indefinitely. Then he addressed the dinner incident, spinning it as me overreacting to a simple comment from an exhausted mother. He made me sound petty, like I was destroying a family over nothing. My attorney's response was precise and devastating. He methodically reviewed the prenup, making crystal clear that the house was my sole property, that our finances had always been separate with complete documentation. Then he presented bank statements showing thousands in automatic monthly transfers to her personal account for years, with zero oversight required. Then came the apartment-hunting email from 5 months before the dinner. He displayed it for the judge. Michelle's face went white. "Your Honor," my lawyer said calmly, "Mrs. Carter claims my client suddenly became controlling. Yet this email proves she was planning to leave months before the alleged incident while continuing to accept substantial monthly support. The question is whether she was orchestrating an exit while maximizing financial benefit." Michelle's lawyer tried objecting, claiming the email was misinterpreted, but the damage was done. Then the judge asked Michelle directly about the dinner comment. He wanted her to explain in her own words what she'd said. She tried downplaying it, claiming it was just an offhand remark taken wrong. The judge interrupted. "Mrs. Carter, did you or did you not tell your husband that you only cook for your children and he should deal with himself?" She hesitated, then whispered yes, but it wasn't. "And this occurred in the home he purchased before marriage, where you and your children live without paying rent?" "Yes, but I meant, and at that time he was providing you substantial monthly financial support." Michelle's lawyer stood attempting to redirect, but the judge waved him off. "I'm trying to understand how the person accused of financial abuse is the one providing housing, utilities, and significant income supporting not only you but your 2 children from a previous marriage." Silence filled the courtroom. Michelle looked like she wanted to vanish. Then her lawyer made a critical error. He filed an emergency motion right there, claiming I was creating a hostile environment and requesting Michelle and the children receive exclusive possession of my house immediately. It backfired spectacularly. The judge looked at the motion, then at me. "Let me understand this clearly. Your client researched apartments months ago while accepting support. She explicitly excluded Mr. Carter from the family unit. He responded by becoming self-sufficient and filing for divorce per a valid prenuptial agreement. And now you want me to remove him from his own property." He denied the motion instantly, then issued a temporary order granting everything my attorney requested. I keep my house. I maintain basic utilities since I live there too. All other financial support pauses until final settlement. She has access to our joint account and is free to seek employment. Leaving the courthouse, Michelle was crying. Her lawyer was trying to console her, probably already managing expectations. My attorney pulled me aside. That went exceptionally well. Her emergency motion made her appear desperate and opportunistic. That evening, I came home to find Michelle had made lasagna, my favorite dish. The house smelled amazing. She'd set the table for 2 with candles. "I made dinner," she said softly, "for us. I thought maybe we could talk." I looked at the setup, understanding exactly what was happening. This wasn't remorse, this was panic. The judge had just told her she was on her own. Now she was trying a different approach, trying to salvage things not because she wanted the marriage, but because she wanted the lifestyle. "Thank you for making dinner," I said politely but distantly. "But I already have plans." I grabbed my keys and left, had a burger at a sports bar down the street, watched some basketball, surrounded by people who had no idea what I was dealing with. When I returned 2 hours later, the lasagna sat cold on the table. The candles had burned out. Michelle's bedroom door was closed. She'd tried to pull me back in. And I'd shown her as clearly as possible without words that it wouldn't work. Tomorrow, my lawyer files our final settlement offer. 12 months rehabilitative alimony, enough for her to get training and find work. It's more than fair. Whether she accepts it is her choice. But either way, this marriage is finished. Final update: it's been 7 months since I microwaved that Chinese food while my wife ate pot roast with her kids. The divorce finalized last week. I wanted to update everyone who followed my story. Your support helped me see I wasn't overreacting, that what happened wasn't normal. Thank you. After the hearing disaster, Michelle's fight just evaporated. Her attorney probably explained very clearly she wouldn't get the house, wouldn't get permanent alimony, wouldn't get child support. The prenup was solid and the judge had already decided. She accepted our settlement 3 weeks later. 12 months rehabilitative alimony, fair division of marital assets, which was minimal since most of my money was premarital. She got her car that I'd paid off and enough cash for deposit and first few months' rent. It was generous considering everything, but it was nowhere near the lifetime comfort she'd demanded. Her last weeks in the house were strange. The anger disappeared, replaced by sullen resentment. She barely acknowledged me. Tyler and Madison stayed mostly in their rooms. I felt bad for them. They didn't ask for any of this. She hired movers for a weekend. I stayed away at my office and a friend's place. When I returned Sunday night, everything was gone, their bedrooms empty, bathrooms stripped. I walked through the house in eerie silence, seeing all the spaces their belongings had occupied. Madison's bookshelf in the living room, Tyler's desk in the corner, Michelle's countless products covering the bathroom counter like they'd never existed. I stood in the kitchen where it started, where she'd told me to deal with myself, where I'd made that decision to end things. The table was empty now. No plates, no laughter, no phones. Just peaceful silence. Through mutual friends, I've heard reality has been harsh for Michelle. The settlement money is disappearing fast with actual cost of living. She rented a small two-bedroom apartment in a less desirable area. No more big house, granite counters, walk-in closets. She got a full-time job for the first time in over a decade, working reception at a dental practice. Apparently, she complains constantly about the apartment, the budget, how exhausted she is. She's furious her easy life ended, but here's what I discovered recently that I wish I'd known earlier. A month ago, I got a message from a woman named Rebecca. She'd heard about my divorce through mutual acquaintances and said she had information I'd want. We met for coffee. She told me her story. 9 years ago, she'd been married to a man named Steven, successful businessman. About 3 years in, Steven met Michelle at a networking event. Michelle was recently divorced with 2 small children, struggling financially. Steven felt sorry for her and gave her contract work. 8 months later, Rebecca discovered Steven was having an affair with Michelle. The divorce was brutal, but here's the part that made my stomach turn. During the divorce, Michelle pushed Steven to marry her, to commit to raising Tyler and Madison. She moved into his house right after Rebecca moved out. They married about a year after his divorce finalized. That marriage lasted 4 years. According to Rebecca, the pattern was identical. Michelle positioned herself as the homemaker, managing everything while Steven worked. She spent freely. She treated him like an ATM. Then one day she said something that made him see his real position. He filed for divorce. She tried taking everything, but he'd been smart enough to get a prenup. She walked away with some alimony and had to find work. About a year later, she met me. Sitting across from Rebecca, I felt physically sick. I wasn't unique. I wasn't some special situation. I was a pattern, a type. The successful single guy who could provide stability until she got bored or he stopped being useful. Rebecca showed me her divorce documents. The timeline matched. Michelle had been married to Steven until about 8 months before we met. She'd told me she'd been a single mom for years. Complete lie. Why didn't you warn me when you knew I married her? I asked. I didn't know until your divorce came up recently, she explained. A mutual friend mentioned it. That's when I connected the dots. Michelle keeps her past relationships very separate. Driving home, everything made sense. The prenup she signed easily because she'd done it before. The homemaker role she played perfectly because she'd practiced. Even the dinner comment, I wonder if she'd said something similar to Steven. I told my lawyer what I'd learned. He investigated and found a third husband before Steven. A pattern spanning nearly 20 years. She'd marry men, live off them for several years, then move to the next one when things got stale. My lawyer asked if I wanted to use this information. Legally, there wasn't much point since the divorce was final, but he documented everything in case she ever tries modifying the agreement. The most meaningful part was Tyler calling me a few weeks ago. He's 18 now, looking at colleges. He wanted advice. We talked about schools and programs and student loans, all that practical stuff. At the end, he said something I'll never forget. Mom's miserable now. She yells constantly. Keeps saying you ruined everything. That life was perfect until you got selfish. He paused. But you didn't ruin her life, Daniel. She did. I'm old enough to see what she does. I remember things from when she was married to Steven. I was only 9 or 10, but I remember. She said the same things about him, that he was boring, didn't appreciate her, ruined everything. Another pause. I don't think you were the problem. I think she is. That validation meant more than any court victory. This kid who'd been dragged through his mother's pattern finally saw it clearly. We talked longer. I told him he could call anytime. He thanked me sincerely. As for me, life is genuinely good. I've reclaimed my space. I've finished projects I'd put off for years, reconnected with old friends, started dating casually. Nothing serious yet, just rediscovering what it's like when someone's interested in you as a person, not a provider. The whole ordeal cost significant money and stress. But I gained back my self-respect, peace of mind, understanding of my own worth. The revenge wasn't elaborate scheming. It was simply letting consequences play out naturally. Her worldview assumed men like me would provide indefinitely without question, that she could treat us however she wanted because we'd be too scared to leave. She saw me as a utility, not a partner. When she said deal with it yourself, she thought she was putting me in my place. but she was really just giving me permission to see the relationship clearly. She told me to deal with it, so I did. I figured out I was better off alone. I figured out how to protect myself legally. I figured out how to walk away from something that looked like family but was really just extraction. And her, now she has to figure it out, how to pay rent, how to budget, how to build life without a safety net she took for granted and disrespected. Her cry of "you're ending this" over dinner showed she never understood what she had. She didn't just lose a husband, she lost a lifestyle she thought was guaranteed. And honestly, that's the most satisfying resolution possible. Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope this helps someone recognize when they're being used and find courage to walk away. You deserve better, we all do.